Not every gift that is given to you comes from a place of pure intention. Some gifts arrive looking generous on the surface, yet carry a quiet weight beneath them that you won't notice at first. In the moment, it feels simple. Someone shows up for you, offers support, gives you something you didn't ask for, and it looks like care. Naturally, you accept it. There is no reason to question something that feels kind, something that appears to make your life easier. But this is exactly where most people miss what is really happening. Because the problem never starts as a problem. It begins as something small, something that feels harmless. A favor here, a thoughtful gesture there, a form of support when you need it most. You take it in without hesitation, assuming it is genuine. Over time, though, the situation begins to shift. What once felt free starts to carry subtle expectations. What once felt like kindness slowly turns into pressure that you didn't sign up for. You begin to notice it in small ways. A comment that reminds you of what was done for you. A moment where you feel like you should respond a certain way, even if you never agree to it. That quiet sense of obligation starts to grow, and before you realize it, your choices are no longer coming from a place of freedom. They are influenced by what you feel you owe. That is where the real issue begins, because the moment something creates obligation without agreement, it stops being just a gift. It becomes a form of influence. And many men walk straight into this without ever questioning it, simply because it didn't look like a problem at the start. Most men don't notice this shift until they are already deep inside it. At the beginning, everything feels normal. You accept what is given to you without thinking twice, because it looks genuine and there is no immediate cost attached. You assume the gesture stands on its own, with no deeper meaning behind it. But what you don't realize is that the meaning often reveals itself later, not at the point of receiving, but at the point where something is expected back from you. This is where things start to change. You begin to feel a subtle pressure, not because anyone clearly stated it, but because the situation now carries a sense of balance that you feel responsible for maintaining. You start thinking about how to respond, how to match what was done, how to avoid looking ungrateful. That internal pressure becomes the first layer of control, because now your actions are no longer fully based on what you want, but on what you feel you should do. The more this happens, the more it builds. Each gesture adds another layer. Each favor increases the weight. And without noticing it, you start adjusting your behavior to maintain that balance. You tolerate things you would normally question. You stay quiet when you would normally speak. You go along with situations you would normally rethink. This is how control develops slowly, without force and without confrontation. It grows through acceptance, through silence, and through small compromises that seem harmless in the moment. By the time you recognize it, your position has already shifted, and stepping back becomes much harder than it should have been. You need to understand something clearly before going any further. This is not about rejecting kindness or becoming closed off to people who genuinely care about you. The goal is not to assume the worst in every situation. The real focus here is awareness, because there is a clear difference between something that is given freely and something that is given with a purpose behind it, even if that purpose is not obvious at first. A genuine gift stands on its own. It does not return later as a reminder. It does not come back during disagreements. It does not create pressure for you to act in a certain way. It exists without conditions, without hidden expectations, and without any need for repayment. But when something is given with intention beyond the surface, it often carries a silent expectation that reveals itself over time. And if you are not paying attention, you will only notice it when it starts affecting your decisions. This is why understanding patterns matters more than focusing on single moments. Anyone can do something kind once. Anyone can show support at a convenient time. But when you begin to see a repeated pattern where what was given keeps coming back as leverage, that is no longer kindness. That is strategy, and strategy is designed to create influence. Many men confuse these two because they focus only on the moment they receive something. They don't look at what follows after. They don't question what it creates over time. And because of that, they slowly step into situations where their freedom starts to shrink without them realizing it. Once you start looking at things this way, everything becomes clearer. You stop reacting to appearances and start paying attention to outcomes. And that shift alone changes how you move in every situation. Now that you understand the difference between genuine intent and hidden purpose, you can start to see how certain patterns play out in real situations. The first one you need to pay close attention to is a gift that quietly comes with conditions. It does not look like a condition when it is given. There is no agreement, no discussion, no pressure in that moment. She helps you, supports you, or gives you something at a time when it feels natural to accept it. Everything appears normal, and because of that, you lower your guard. But the condition is not meant to show up immediately. It appears later, usually at a moment when she wants something from you. That is when the reminder comes in. You start hearing phrases that bring you back to what she did for you. You are reminded of the help, the support, the effort she made. And suddenly, what once felt free now feels like something you have to respond to. This is where the shift happens. The situation turns from a simple gesture into an unspoken transaction. You never agreed to it, but now you feel like you are part of it. That sense of obligation starts influencing how you respond. You hesitate before saying no. You think twice before standing your ground. You begin adjusting your decisions, not because you want to, but because you feel like you owe something in return. That is how control is introduced without being obvious. It doesn't come through force. It comes through memory, through reminders, and through the pressure of feeling indebted. And once that feeling is in place, it becomes harder to separate your choices from the influence behind them. Another thing you need to watch closely is how this pattern grows over time. It never stays at one level. The more you accept, the more it builds. One favor leads to another, one gesture adds to the previous one, and each time it happens, the sense of obligation becomes stronger. At first, it might feel small, almost insignificant, but as it repeats, it starts forming a structure that quietly shapes your behavior. You begin to notice that your decisions are no longer as clear as they used to be. Instead of simply choosing what aligns with you, you start considering everything that has been done for you. You weigh your response against past actions, and that changes how you move. You might agree to things you would normally decline. You might stay in situations longer than you should. You might even ignore certain signs because you don't want to disrupt the balance that has been created. This is how control becomes steady and consistent. It is no longer about one moment or one decision. It becomes a pattern that influences you over time. And the more it grows, the harder it is to step out of it, because now there is history attached to it. There are multiple moments you feel connected to, and walking away starts to feel like you are turning your back on all of it. But this is where clarity is important. A real gift does not keep count. A real gift does not return later as a reminder. It does not build a case against you over time. The moment something is repeatedly used as a reference point to influence your actions, it was never given freely. It was given with a purpose, and that purpose is control. The next situation you need to be aware of is when something valuable is given too early, before any real foundation has been built. Timing plays a bigger role than most people realize. When you are just getting to know someone, everything should develop at a natural pace. The connection should grow through shared experiences, consistency, and mutual understanding. But when expensive gifts or major support appear too soon, it disrupts that process. At first, it feels exciting. It can even make you feel appreciated in a way that stands out. You start thinking that this person sees something special in you, something worth investing in right away. That feeling can be powerful, and that is exactly why it works. Because instead of building the connection step by step, everything jumps ahead, creating a sense of depth that hasn't actually been earned yet. Once that happens, the balance begins to shift. You start to feel the weight of what has been given. Even if nothing is said directly, there is an unspoken pressure that comes with it. You begin asking yourself how to respond, how to match the energy, how to avoid falling short. That internal dialogue changes your position, because now your actions are influenced by what you have received, not just by what you want. This is how emotional positioning takes place. By introducing high value early, the dynamic is no longer equal. You begin to operate from a place of trying to maintain what has already been given. And in doing so, you may overlook things you would normally question, simply because you don't want to seem ungrateful or dismissive. Another thing that makes early, expensive gestures risky is the illusion they create. When something big happens too soon, it can make the connection feel deeper than it actually is. You start associating the value of the gift with the value of the bond, even though the two are not the same. It feels like things are progressing quickly, like there is something strong building between you, but in reality, the foundation has not been properly formed. This illusion can affect your judgment. You may begin to overlook inconsistencies or ignore certain behaviors that would normally stand out to you. Instead of taking your time to understand the person, you lean into the feeling that has already been created. And because that feeling is tied to something tangible, something valuable, it becomes even harder to question it. Over time, this imbalance starts to show. One person has already invested heavily, while the other is still figuring things out.
That difference creates pressure, even if it is never spoken out loud. You may feel like you need to move faster than you should, to commit earlier than you are ready, or to stay in a situation simply because of what has already been given. This is why pace matters. Real connection is built through consistency, not intensity. It grows through time, shared understanding, and steady effort from both sides. When something tries to replace that process with sudden value, it often leads to instability. And once the foundation is unstable, everything built on top of it becomes difficult to maintain. The next pattern you need to pay attention to is when something that was given to you later becomes a way to shut you down. At the beginning, it feels like support. She helps you, she shows up for you, she does things that make your life easier, and everything seems normal. There is no tension, no conflict, and no reason to question anything. But the moment you try to express yourself, that is when the dynamic starts to change. You bring up something that doesn't feel right. You try to set a boundary or speak on an issue that matters to you. Instead of addressing what you said, the focus shifts. You are reminded of everything that has been done for you. The conversation is no longer about the problem, it becomes about what you received, and suddenly, you are placed in a position where speaking up feels wrong. This is how silence is created without force. You start to hesitate before expressing yourself. You think about how it will be received, not because your point is invalid, but because you already know it will be redirected. Over time, you begin to hold things in. You avoid conversations that could lead to conflict, simply because you don't want to be made to feel ungrateful. That shift affects your confidence. When your voice is constantly redirected or dismissed, you begin to question your own position. You start wondering if you are the problem, even when you are not. And once that doubt sets in, it weakens your ability to stand firm. That is when the balance of the relationship changes, because now you are no longer expressing yourself freely. You need to be very clear about this. The moment something that was given to you is used as a reason to limit your voice, it has already crossed the line. No gesture, no support, no form of help should ever take away your ability to speak honestly. The second you feel like you have to stay quiet just to maintain peace, you are no longer operating from a position of strength. You are adjusting to avoid pressure, and that is how control takes hold. This doesn't always happen in obvious ways. Sometimes it is subtle, a tone shift, a reminder, a look that signals you should stop pushing the conversation further. Over time, you begin to recognize the pattern, and instead of addressing it, you adapt to it. You choose silence over expression, comfort over clarity, and that slowly reshapes your behavior. What used to be natural for you, speaking your mind and standing on your values, becomes something you hold back. Once that pattern is established, the relationship becomes one-sided. One person can express freely, while the other is constantly filtering their words. And that imbalance creates a deeper problem because communication is no longer equal. Without equal communication, there is no real connection, only control masters harmony. So you have to pay attention to how your voice is treated. If every attempt to speak is met with reminders of what you received, that is not appreciation, that is leverage. And the moment leverage replaces mutual respect, the situation is no longer healthy. The final pattern you need to understand is one that feels the most comfortable, yet can be the most damaging over time. It is when what is given to you slowly begins to replace your own effort. At the beginning, it feels like relief. Things become easier. Problems get handled before you even think about them. Support is always there, and it feels like you don't have to struggle the way you used to. On the surface, it looks like everything is working in your favor. But as time passes, something starts to change within you. You begin to rely on that ease. You stop pushing yourself in the same way. You stop solving certain problems on your own. Your mindset shifts from building your own path to maintaining what has already been provided. That quiet shift is where the real danger is, because it slowly reduces your independence without you even noticing it. The more you depend on that comfort,
the harder it becomes to function without it.
And once that dependence is there, your decisions are no longer fully yours.
You start thinking about what you might lose instead of what is right for you. You hesitate to make bold moves. You hesitate to stand firm. And that hesitation becomes a form of control. Growth comes from effort, from facing challenges, and from handling your own responsibilities. When those things are removed, even in a way that feels positive, you lose the process that strengthens you. So the rule is simple: never accept anything that replaces your effort, because the moment you stop building yourself, you slowly lose who you are.